Welcome, dear listeners, to the Speak and Flow podcast, where we dive into unique experiences to help you and your team achieve maximum potential, connection, clarity, and flow. Today, I have an amazing, incredibly smart leader in the finance industry, and we're going to geek out into some finance planning and analysis talk and how to convey complex, difficult, detailed information in a way with storytelling and flow. And so today we have Devin Fong. He's a FPA, which stands for Financial Planning and Analysis Consultant with over 12 years of experience. I'm so glad to have him. Welcome, Devin.
Hi, Melinda. Thanks for having me on. I think this
Thank
will be fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun today. This is a powerful episode, and I think it's gonna be so relevant to all of our analysts, engineers, mathematicians, finance planners out there. And so today, well, before we dive into that, can you share with us, you're a consultant now, FPA consultant, like what makes you so excited about working with your clients?
I think for me, I really enjoy taking like data, right, and being able to use that data to tell a story and communicate that to the client or like, whoever your audience may be, and connecting it, to the story that they want to tell and, kind of either backing up the story with the numbers or like, really just like driving home a point that they want to drive home.
Right. I mean, because I know that just data and numbers itself is one perspective, and but a lot of people can use and see that data in various ways. And so by you telling a story is how you elaborate, accentuate, and really share where you're getting at with the numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that sometimes data alone is not enough. Data is important, but it's also not enough sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times people can say like, well, you know, I don't need you to do the math for me because if you're just doing a math homework problem, anybody can do that.
Uh-huh.
So the value really comes from like, what is this thing telling me?
I love that. I mean, that speaks to the true leadership communication skill that is necessary as a leader. Because yes, anybody, I mean, not crunching numbers is difficult. I can't. That's something for you all to do. That's one skill set, but like you mentioned, like to really take your value up as a leader, to be able to communicate it with power, clarity, connection, um, accuracy
Mhm.
is another level of leadership. Is that what you're
Right,
saying?
right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's what you help your clients do,
hmm
and that's what you do for your clients.
Yep, pretty much.
Love it. And so I know that you have had so much experience in this arena. And so can you share with us a time where it was not for you and your team, where it was difficult to communicate the data, the details, and the numbers?
Yeah, sure. So, in a past life, when I had a team to manage, we had like a recurring bi-weekly call. And, I told this team member like, hey, like you need to own like this call now. And she being like a finance person, like, they geek out over the numbers or like the numbers are very critical.
Mm.
Um, and so, they put a lot of weight on that, right? And so then all of a sudden, as like the day is approaching, like they're getting nervous and like they're trying to follow, like, they're trying to structure the call very like logically. So like
Mm.
they write up a script and it's like, you can see because like these calls are going on over Zoom, right? And so you can see like their eyes are like moving along with the script, right? And they're like, this isn't going too well. Um, No, I mean, like, even, like, they're trying to, like, multitask live at the same time with, like, they're presenting figures, they're, like, looking at a script, and there's, like, I'm sure there's spreadsheets on one side of the screen and their notes are on the other
Yeah.
side. And when somebody asks a question, it's like it breaks them out of, like, the script, right? And then they're like, "Oh my goodness, like, I don't even know what this person just asked me."
Yeah, then it's like freezing, like because it's
Yeah.
like you don't know where to go because it's
Yeah, exactly.
structured.
And I think
Yeah,
as is typical probably for a lot of you know, number crunchers or like finance or accounting type people. Uh,
right.
they're not as like, speaking to an audience doesn't resonate as much with them, or like, they get nervous more easily, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, because you're behind the spreadsheet, you're behind the numbers all day long for many
Hmm.
hours, and then to be asked, well, kudos to you to ask her to do that to help stretch her. But at the same time, yeah, once you've been asked to do something like this,
Hmm.
it's so challenging because they're behind the numbers all day long, and then to finally say something, it can be
Hmm.
quite nervous, like
Hmm.
annoying.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, in that scenario, it didn't go well, mostly because it was like the person, she was just like really bogged down in the details, like I said. And there was no storytelling, right? It was just kind of like you're just reciting like a list of numbers. And it's like, well, you could have just shot that in an email.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what was the audience doing? Like, do you know how the audience was feeling by chance, or did you get?
Um, we didn't take feedback from the audience other than like I mean, you can tell, right? Like
Yeah.
they're like, why am I here? Like but in terms of like the audience, they were all like more senior level people. So I think that probably adds like some pressure as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was like embarrassing for her, for the team, for
I mean, yeah, like probably embarrassing like in the worst case scenario, but like from like a I guess a business standpoint, it's like why did you like, why did we have all these people on this call? Because like, especially if they're senior people, like this call costs like X amount of dollars for X amount of time, right? So I mean, at least that's how I think about it.
I
Uh,
love it. I love it. That's speaking to what I do in terms of ROI.
yeah, exactly. So there was like negative ROI.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh, so or technically, there's no ROIs.
Right. Either negative or no
Yeah,
ROI. Correct. Right.
yeah. So that would be the negative impact, I guess, to your question.
Mm-hmm. And then so from there, what was a moment when you did have something that did turn out well, your team present effectively?
Yeah, so like piggybacking on that same example. So, I always do like these postmortems with my team just to see like, hey, like, basically what did you expect to happen and then what really happened and then how do we like bridge like that gap? And so I gave her like constructive feedback. I was like, hey, you're kind of like super bogged down in the details and like, these people don't care about those things. Like they just need you to tell them a story, right? Like why this stuff matters. Um, and so I also offered her like, hey, like, for the next run in a couple weeks, why don't we do some like mock presentations, right? Like, it'll just be me and you one-on-one on Zoom, and like we'll just go through this stuff. I'll give you feedback either live or after you finish your like presentation, right? Um, and then like, gave her pointers like, don't use a script, just like keep these things top of mind. Um, and then we went through like, a few iterations, and then the next time she presented, it was like night and day.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing. What happened when you asked her to let go of the script and just was she okay with that? Was she nervous about doing that?
Yeah, I think at first she was like, I'm still gonna have a script, but it
Uh-huh.
was more so like notes,
No.
like yeah. So I think she wrote down like the main bullet points that she
Right,
needed to go through.
right.
But you can tell like on the call, like her eyes weren't like, reading along
Yes,
something the whole
yes.
time. So
Yes, yes, that really helps a lot with just bullet points, and then
yeah,
practice with somebody, like really practicing with somebody is a huge help. And then
yeah.
practicing it from like your heart, not word
Mhm.
for word and more
Yeah, yeah.
bullets.
And it also unlocked her too, right? Because now when people in the audience are asking her questions,
Right,
she can speak freely about whatever it is she's talking about,
right.
rather than like freaking out, like, okay, like this is where I stopped in my script. And then like, and that's also super unnatural too, if you think about it, right? Like imagine you get asked a question and then you're like, okay, and continuing, and like you look for that space in your script and you just start reading again, and it's just like super weird.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep. I mean, I remember the days when I used to do that. I understand.
Yeah.
I know too well. So, but kudos to you for helping her to get out of that and to break
Yeah.
out of that habit.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm curious, how do you help your team with storytelling if they're not accustomed to telling stories around data?
You kind of have to like build up. So like, because I've been in their shoes before too, because I've had the same feedback from my manager when I presented to like co-founders or whatever, and saying my manager told me like, hey, you are super bogged down in the details, and like these guys either know nothing about it, don't care about it because that's your job, or
Mhm.
like they just need to
Mhm.
know like why this stuff's important. Um,
Yes.
so I kind of like echoed the same message that my old manager gave me, because it resonated with me. So I think maybe it would resonate with people in the same field.
Mhm.
And I think it does because they kind of understand like, okay, like you're right, like, I need to be able to step back and like be able to tell a story with this. And then in terms of like helping them, like, tell the story, you just kind of like guide them along, right? You just ask them like, why do you think this is important? Or like, what does this mean? Like you really get their like kind of their mind like cranking on like, oh, why is this important?
Yeah, because I know what that feels like to be so proud of you probably as finance, building these models, like very proud of the
Mhm,
models and the numbers and the
mhm,
accuracy. And so you
mhm.
want to showcase that, but then
Yeah.
when you don't, and when it's like you said, the senior leaders don't care really how
Mhm,
you got there or all the details of how you got there, but we
mhm,
want to showcase that because it showcases our talent. But at the same
mhm,
time, like going back to what you're saying, okay, you've done all this number crunching, you did this modeling. Okay, really, what does that mean? Like, what does
mhm,
this model mean for the business and
mhm,
why is it important? And then telling that story clearly, confidently,
mhm,
right? Is
mhm.
that the questions that will help them with the storytelling?
Yeah, exactly. I think you're onto something there too, because I think there's like kind of a misalignment because like as like a junior analyst, like you kind of show your worth like, hey, look, I modeled this thing out.
Yeah.
Like my model looks really cool, and like these things are automated, and this button does that. But like when you when you present that to like the co-founder or whatever, like they don't care that your model's formatted like super pretty or like these things are automated. Like
Yep.
they just need to know like, yo, man, what are you telling me?
Yeah. And how do you help them with telling it confidently in terms of, especially if they don't, yeah, if they're really doing all the number crunching, any tips for sharing more
Yeah, I think you have to empower your I guess your direct reports or your teammates, right? You have to let them know like, hey, you're crushing it, and like you really do know all this stuff, and like you can present it to me, and you can when we do our mocks, like you speak to it very well.
Yep.
So you give them that confidence. I think that does help a lot. And I think, just the repetitions, like the more they do it, the more confident they get. And so like as a leader, like giving up your time to like run these mocks with them, I think that
Mhm.
helps a lot.
Oh, I love that. Which leads me to the one last final question, Devin, that I like to ask all my guests.
Mhm.
What is the one leadership golden takeaway that you want the audience to remember?
Yeah, so I would say for me, like a golden leadership takeaway, to me is like what makes a really great leader, and just like reflecting back on my time and like my leaders that I've had throughout my life. I think a great leader intentionally designs like a safe environment or space for their people to be their authentic selves, right? They empower their people to take risks, to kind of like own their role. Um, and they really drive home the point of like, there's like a shared purpose. And so people understand not just like what they're doing, because like most people know what they're doing, but maybe not everyone knows like why they're doing it. So just like connecting that shared purpose, I think that is really like the golden takeaways for me for leadership.
Yeah, I do have a question with that. I love that how you create the safe space for people, which is
Mhm.
helps them to not feel contracted because I've had clients where they've had managers, they're actually bright, But then
Mhm.
as soon as they're being questioned or micromanaged, then
Mhm.
they're starting to make poorer decisions than
Yep,
had they been have given the freedom. But then
exactly.
when we're thinking about finance and
Mhm.
the crucial the importance of how every detail matters, like how do you know what to give them ownership and what not to, that might be detrimental to the organization? Like how do you
Mm.
for that?
So, I think at least at the analyst level, you should always be able to tie back your numbers to, like, some sorts of truth.
Uh-huh.
So there's always, like, kind of like there's some figure that should basically your numbers should make sense, if
Okay.
that makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay. Okay.
So, as long as, like, the numbers or the math itself can, like, be the ultimate validator, like, yeah, you can own that because if the numbers say you're wrong, you're wrong, like, I don't even need to look, like
Uh-huh. You figure out how you got there, but if they're wrong, then they're wrong. Is that what it
yeah,
is?
exactly,
Got it.
exactly. Or, like, yeah, if something like, if one of their assumptions are, like, just super off, then you can
Yeah.
just tell them, like, "Hey, like, this doesn't make sense," or, like, you can ask them, like, "Why did you make this assumption?" Or, like, "Why does this make sense to you?" And, like,
Got it.
you just let them talk it out. Um,
Got
but
it.
in terms of, like, yeah, what do you know you can, like, give them full, autonomy over? I would
Oh.
say mostly it's things that kind of, like, there is, like, a source of truth for me to check back on, or for them to check back on, so that they can just, like, look at it and see, like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is what the figures should be, but my model's like doing this, and so that's super weird. So that doesn't make sense."
Got it. And so, could you tie that into some sort of metric when you can think about the whole team knowing why they're doing what they're doing, taking ownership? Like, how would that translate into the business ROI?
I think you kind of just it frees up like a lot of like you know, my time, and then like they feel more empowered to, make their own decisions on the model. Because it gets really cumbersome if, you know, somebody has to ask you about every assumption, right? Um,
Yeah.
so the ROI is really just like in the lift that it gives like the entire org, in the sense of like, okay, um, this person knows that they should probably work with these assumptions, and like this is their source of truth. And then, they just, I guess, to put it more succinctly, if they know like, hey, this my manager is trusting me to like to own this, um, they'll go out and they'll do it, and like they'll talk to the right people, right? And I think that's the ROI when you're like you're lifting stuff off of like other people's plate and just like taking it on for yourself.
Mm-hmm. 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 So it could be more efficient
Hmm.
and efficient because you're taking it off of the senior manager's plate or the manager's plate, and then as well as me, hopefully as I develop my confidence, then I'm more efficient because I don't have to
Hmm.
keep on asking other people on how to do that, how to do
Hmm.
things and taking things off people's plate, and
Hmm.
everybody feels lifted.
Exactly.
Love it. I love
Hmm.
that. Well, thank you so much, Devin. I trust that our audience took away a lot of golden nuggets today.
Yeah,
I
I hope
certainly
so.
did. Yeah, I certainly did with regard to the crucial importance of people that are more, they do the number crunching, they do the analysis, they do the engineering, all of these people, all of you experts with such high valuable information and data, but that is needing to be conveyed correctly,
Yeah, exactly.
effectively, like the power
Hmm.
behind that, the power
Hmm.
of knowing how to do that, how when you do that, you're elevating the entire organization, you're helping your leaders, you're helping the
Hmm.
organization get
Hmm.
lifted. So I really
Hmm.
appreciate that. And also the power of storytelling with your data.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then creating a safe space for people
Mhm.
to do that.
Yep, for sure. I think, yeah, that's one of the most powerful things when people feel that they can just be themselves. Like it's very lifting, and also it just unlocks a lot of like people's, potential. Or I guess at the very worst, you don't feel like you're walking on eggshells at work.
Exactly. Yep. And then that leads to more mistakes.
Hmm.
Think so. So
Hmm.
thank you so much, Devin. for your time, for your expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
It was really fun.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you, audience, for being here. I trust you are well. And remember, your voice is your power. Through connection, clarity, and some courage, you can use your voice to speak in flow. And when you do, you are supporting your communities, your families. And so until next time, I'll see you later. If you liked this episode, I trust that you did. Subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much. Take care. Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.